if you want to say like the problem is, and you don't want to go super negative after a win, but given the schedule coming up, the high quality of teams that they're going to play, like they've got to continue to find ways. We're going to be like Rivera wants them to be on this show. Hey, just because you won doesn't mean you can't correct stuff. Heinicke on the day is 14 of 23, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, has another pick that's overturned correctly, but turnover-worthy play for sure, and a couple of others that are, close calls. And it's weird because it doesn't feel like he was awful. Those numbers are pretty rough. Like 138 yards passing is yikes, man. But at the same time, like it just, I don't know. It works. I don't even know how I feel. I kind of want to watch it again, and maybe I'll have a better feeling by the time we do this again. I mean, I will have a better feeling by the time we do this again on Wednesday. I might have a better feeling by 3:00 when I take the air for the Hoffman show tomorrow. Yeah. But I am very mixed because, like, emotionally, I feel like Taylor kind of did the job, and that might just be an adjustment of expectations, that my expectations for him are very, very low. And that if the offense overall does enough, then I feel like, hey, good job, Taylor. You did your part. But it's not going to quiet down Ron's internal desire to want to try something with a higher ceiling. And that obviously is Carson Wentz as he comes back to health.
Yeah, obviously we got to watch the film, but I personally think this is like the pendulum swinging back for Heinicke. Like if you look at what he's done so far this year, I think there's been some really good moments, some things he's done really, really well. And I think it kind of swings back. I think about Minnesota, that was probably one of his rougher games, start to finish, right? And then this game felt like that. But I felt like Atlanta didn't have the defensive personnel to capitalize on it necessarily and hurt you the same way and really kind of put him in a confounding situation. They didn't have the pass rush, right? So all those things that kind of imploded and kind of tidal waved him back, against Minnesota, like that was the same type of performance, but the result was drastically different because, like the defense wasn't quite as good. And I think they weren't able to capitalize on some of that variance. Everyone's talking about turnover worthy plays and kind of how he ranks very high in that statistic. But I also think this defense wasn't able to maximize that necessarily. So that's kind of how I feel about it to start. Like this is part of the Heinicke experience, right? It's going to be good. Like I think about last week, who'd they play last week? The Houston Texans. And then the week before that, Philadelphia, right? Mm-hmm. And to get those two performances of very high Taylor Heinicke play, it's going to come back at some point, and this is him coming back, and it just happens to be very fortunate that it doesn't come back and bite him totally in the butt. So obviously I have to watch it myself and kind of review what's going on there, but I think that this is a great example of like what you get in terms of the variance, like those statistical nerds kind of talk about the variance of a statistic. Like this is the other side of that variance. This is the side where like he's not going to play well. He's going to put the ball in harm's way, and he just kind of skates out of it unscathed because the defense isn't able to capitalize.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you go deeper than 138 yards, not exactly exciting. 0 sacks.
Yep, good on third down.
On third down today, they were 5 of 12,
Not
1
bad.
of 1 on fourth down, and they somehow increased their lead in the NFL this year in time of possession. They're 33.09. They have been averaging about 32.40 something. So they're 33.09 time of possession. And if he can operate the offense to that level, I just find it hard to believe that they're going to move off of that. I'm not saying that it's not tempting to see if there's something else out there that's better in Carson or, get wild with Sam. But, like, at this point in the season, you're not going to the rookie. But, like, it's just it makes sense in some facets because he's willing to run that game plan. He does the things you need to do to avoid the negative plays. Again, Terry is your leader in targets and has a bunch of really big catches in the game, some key third downs that he converts. McLaurin on the day, 4 for 48 on 6 targets. And he also, like the touchdown to Robinson, he just gets it out quick and lets Brian do his thing. He understands the old Alex Smith, like you're not going to go broke making a profit kind of deal. And I think that the other part of that is you're not going to go broke when you don't lose any money. And zero sacks for 0 yards means you lost no money on that side of it. And so that to me is ultimately the overriding factor right now. I'd still probably take that over, okay, yeah, he threw for 180 yards or 220 yards. 250 yards, but got sacked 4 times in, the same touchdown interception situation.
Yeah, and I think, I know there's going to be a conglomerate of people who want Carson back in the lineup, and if there's a couple more performances like this, I think that's the thing. If this had gone, like, let's say for example, like we were talking about the pitch in the first quarter on the first or the second drive of the game, where it kind
Yeah,
of is floundering on the ground. Like, I understand, like, he's trying to get the ball out, and try not to take a sack, but let's say that goes the other way, and that's a
right.
fumble, right? And then he throws the interception to AJ Terrell is right. This game is
We're having a
completely different,
very different
very different
discussion.
conversation, and I think that's the thing that I think the guys at PFF, the national media correspondents, that's the thing that they're looking at. They're not looking at like, oh yeah, he did a great job to Brian Robinson, he did a great job to Terry McLaurin. They're not looking at that. They're saying at some point this is going to explode, and it's going to be a terrible game. And is it in a game that matters? Like, is it? And quite frankly, all the games for the rest of the season matter. But there is a team, probably San Francisco, maybe the Giants, probably Dallas. They're going to be able to capitalize on these mistakes he's making if he gives them to him, right? And like we've talked about, he doesn't do this every week. Like Philadelphia played a pretty clean brand of football. I know he threw the interception, right? Against Houston, pretty clean outside that first kind of attempt to throw an interception early in the game, but don't really have a problem with that. But then you go to Minnesota and you see what happens when he's kind of leveraged, when it swings back the other way. So at some point it's going to happen. It just like, is it at a point where it ruins their chances to make the playoffs or whatever it is, whatever the goal for the team is. So I think he deserves to start. But if I'm a national person, a national media personality, I say, man, Washington dodged a bullet because there's 4 plays in here that should have been turnovers, could have been turnovers in addition to the one that was. And like I said, we've talked about this ad nauseum. He elevates the offensive line. He elevates the pass game right now. But there's also, if those things are actualized, they lose this game. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. And it's not a matter of if it happens, it's a matter of when it happens.
Right. And just to quickly reiterate something that we agreed upon on the pregame show when we had this discussion this morning, Carson can have that game too. And because of that, it's not like you're going back to 2018 Aaron Rodgers or 2000 anything Tom Brady. You're going back to 2022 Carson Wentz. And if that's the case, then I don't know how much. I think we both would rather take this version of Taylor that doesn't have the downside of the sacks and those kinds of things that keeps the offense trucking, and how they've gone from 2-4 to very much in control of their own playoff destiny. They're a half game behind the Giants, who they play for their next 2 games with a bye in the middle. So there's a chance they could, if they win both of those games and the Giants lose the game in between, they're 3 games up on New York. They also have a game against Dallas, who's the other team that's ahead of them in the wild card. So they could get, they're not going to catch Philly, probably, unless the Eagles just implode down the stretch at 9-1. But they're 2 games back in the loss column of Philly. They're 1 game back, in the win column of Philly. They're 1 game back of Dallas. They're tied with New York, and they play all those teams. And then depending on what happens in the West, you've got San Francisco and Seattle, who are currently tied record-wise. San Francisco holds the tiebreaker. But if you wind up in a tiebreak situation with San Francisco, you play them too. So, Washington is very much in control of their own playoff path right now.
Yeah.
That is wild, considering the things we were saying. I sat on one of these post-game pods and drank a beer earlier this year, Logan.
That's true. I think this to me is what I try to keep in mind every single week of the NFL season is look at the New York Giants right now. There is a chance that they lose the rest of the games for this season, right? And they are 7-11. And obviously that's a better record than a lot of people thought, but they just got hot at the right time. And then it was in the national kind of zeitgeist for a while that, the Giants are really good. This is awesome. The season goes in waves. It goes in quarters. Like the first quarter of the season is really nonsense, in my opinion, because you don't really know what anybody is. And then the second quarter of the season, you kind of figure out, okay, this is who they want to be. And then it's not till like game 8, 9, 10 that you say, this is what this team is. And that's why the second half of the NFL season is so fun, right? It's because everything becomes finalized. So it's cool that the defense has kind of grown up. They've blossomed into a unit that we feel pretty good about. The special teams is playing really well. The offense has this identity kind of centered around running the football. And according to kind of trending NFL statistics at the moment, that's a viable way to win football games, which a lot of people thought was impossible at the beginning of the season. So I think it's a really exciting time to be a Commanders fan. And I think the coaching staff, Ron Rivera, Scott Turner, Jack Del Rio, all the assistant coaches deserve a ton of credit for that. And also the players deserve a ton of credit. We talked about this previously, but we can't say it enough. Just how some of these young pieces have developed. Forrest leads the team in tackles today, right? Seconded by Jamin Davis, right? Two guys that were kind of like, who are they going to be? What's their role going to be? Is Jamin going to be out of the league in 2 years? Like, and now all of a sudden they're huge contributing pieces to this team. You get Christian Holmes stepping in for an injured St. Juste, who does an excellent job today. I mean, obviously there's a face mask penalty, but for a guy
there's one or two other plays where he kind of lost to edge contain, and you're like, buddy.
Like a 7th round pick to come in and kind of be a developmental piece, I don't think that's a bad thing, right? McCain at the nickel, right? That's been a really nice addition. So all of those things are very, very exciting. I mean, Casey Toohill has another tackle for loss today almost, and gets in on a sack. Like, these pieces that were much maligned and kind of like unimpressive are now kind of growing. So it's exciting. You'd like to see some of that, again, some of that develop for, on the offense. And I guess there is, like, the running backs have developed quite a bit. The offensive line is galvanized. Terry McLaurin is kind of being the big dog, which is the first time, like, I've really seen him kind of own that since I've been covering the team. So, like, that's been really cool. And then obviously the one variable there, which is maybe the most important variable, which we've talked about a lot in the pregame on the podcast, is Taylor. And those things, I think we know the answer to Taylor. It's just about, can the other things around him continue to develop to insulate him even further?